Hey Zwifters, and welcome to this special episode of the Zwiftcast, which is devoted entirely to a conversation with Zwift CEO Eric Min.
Right on!
Welcome to the Zwiftcast, Eric Min, for our third. Yeah, this is our third traditional big sit-down chats where I ask you loads and loads of questions, many of them suggested by the community. So I'm going to pitch straight in, Eric, with referring you back to our interview of last year, actually. And last time we spoke in detail, which was exactly a year ago, you rated Zwift as 2 out of 10 in terms of fulfilled potential. Where are we now?
I'd say 3.5. I think we've made some big strides. I mean, events have evolved, right? The group workouts, I think, is a big opportunity to bring more people onto Zwift. I think it's the closest thing. It's our response to spinning. But we've done other things, and we've done a lot of things behind the scenes that will allow us to really enhance the product, the platform. It's called, some of it is what we call technical debt. So we've been paying some of that off, and we have more to go. But we're trying to build the infrastructure to really build out the product.
Without going into too much detail, what kinds of things are those behind the scenes? Are they preparing the platform for being bigger?
Yes. So John and his team are incredibly talented in creating a game that can run on literally the most basic hardware. You can run it on a $100 laptop. Some of the technology work that he's doing will allow us to scale the platform with respect to the size of the map, for example, the number of jerseys we could have, the number of people we can have in events. So there's a lot of work that's happening behind the scenes that's not so obvious to the community, but it's setting us up so that we can be ready for the kind of growth that we expect to have this winter.
Next up was the numbers, starting with the size of the Zwift nation. Has Zwift yet reached a size where you don't personally know everybody in the company's name?
I'd be lying if I said I know everyone at the company. Every time I drop into Long Beach, there are new faces, so I make sure that I go out of my way to introduce myself. But it is incredibly hard to remember everyone's name.
And the company is growing, 120 employees now?
We are almost 140.
Okay.
Yeah.
And more hires to come?
And more hires to come.
Let me push you a bit on numbers, because Zwifters are interested in how many other Zwifters are on the platform. About a year or so ago, you said you had 180,000 accounts. Is the Zwift nation now a good deal bigger than that?
Yeah, I think I think we probably have 400,000 accounts. Maybe 300,000 of them were customers at one point. The acquisition is very seasonal. Turns out the churn isn't. So we onboard a boatload of people during the 6 months of, let's say, from October to March. And actually not that many people drop off.
Yeah. How big is churn, or how bad a problem is churn at the moment?
Yeah, I think I'm very happy to share this, but I think 1 in 7, roughly. So it's
1 in 7
churn. Yeah, churn, and they don't come. I give a perfect example to others about churn. I think I've churned from Netflix at least 3 times. I finally come back because it is the destination for on-demand video. And I've stopped churning. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think in many ways people have to leave Zwift to really appreciate it. Yeah. And so we see lots of people coming back.
Yeah. What proportion of company resource, or what proportion of company priority is devoted to pleasing current users versus attracting new subscribers?
I think the product is really about servicing the existing customers. We're investing in running, and perhaps we'll invest in rowing, but our core is, we have to create a great experience for our existing customers. It makes sense for us to service our core, our existing customers best as possible, because they will help us to grow the network.
Around this time last year, you closed a funding round. Is another funding round underway, and what can you tell us about the progress on that? Are there any numbers that can be attached to it?
We're continuing to invest in the business, this is I think what partly differentiates us versus others that have come before us. It does take a lot of capital to see this through, and we are still some way from achieving profitability, which is fine, because we think this is a business worth investing long term.
So you've carefully avoided answering the question, Eric, as to whether a funding round is actually going to happen.
Yeah, it's inevitable. We'll have to go back to the well and raise more capital. I mean, that's just the nature of the business that we're in.
Do you expect that to be easy?
I think we've shown enough momentum that investors will find what we're doing very interesting. We're not chasing a niche business. I mean, we think the market is vast. If we think that everyone is chasing fitness. So if you use that as a basis for determining the total addressable markets, it's quite big. Our belief is that if we continue to focus on building a great product, great experience, so that more people are motivated to get fit, I think that's a fine mission to chase. I think we can create a great business on the back of that mission.
This is an incredibly active space, and the rivals are growing. I heard of yet another one just this week with a former pro cyclist behind it. Road Grand Tours obviously has a long way to go, but they're making some progress. The Chinese copycats are around. They're probably not a really serious threat, but this is a really active space. Right. And what Zwift has proved is that indoor cycling can be a whole load of fun. So why are other people not going to do it? Well, they probably are. Yeah. So how conscious of the threat from rivals are you, and what do you do about it? I mean, continually make the product better, I guess.
We definitely know what's being built out there. There's a big difference between a project and a business. There's so many facets to get a business up and running. I mean, convincing someone to take out their wallet and pay for a service takes a lot of work. We're not concerned. We have so much work ahead of us. I mean, I think our risk is around our own execution. It's not because of someone else entering the market. So our focus is continue to grow the network, improve the experience, and I think it's the right approach. I think that the network is what's I think the biggest competitive advantage that we have. You can throw enough money and someone can build a Facebook platform, right? But are they going to find the social network there, right? Why would people move?
Yeah. So Zwift's defense really is Zwift is there, Zwift is good, and Zwift is full of people.
Exactly. And so we need to focus on that. And we don't need to focus on the people around us.
But you no doubt keep an eye.
Of course. I mean, I look at all the other services as a consumer myself. I've tried everything. But I'm not, and I'm sure all of the Grand Tour users, Road Grand Tour, sorry, are active Zwifters as well, and we see them all, which is fine. It's a big market, and I hope they continue to invest in their projects.
Let's talk a little bit about Peloton, because certainly in North America they're huge, and some of the numbers around Peloton, there are some question marks raised about some of the numbers around Peloton, but they've certainly been very, very successful at raising money. Very different from market from Zwift, but and it's a spinning market, and it seems to me to be predominantly female. Now that to me looks like a very nice big juicy peach that Zwift would like a big bite out of. Is it something you see as vulnerable to Zwift having a real go at it, at that market?
We're not really focused on the Peloton market. I mean, it's a different business. It's a different experience. They have raised a lot of capital, and that's because it has to fund their advertising. We're not an advertising-driven business. They are a direct response business. They sell $2,000 trainer, and you're paying $39 a month. You're locked in for 1 year. It's just a different business, and I think what they're doing is great. They're promoting indoor cycling. I think that's fantastic for Zwift. And I think there are people who find that experience, indoor spinning experience, attractive, and then there are others who find Zwift more appealing for the kind of experience they want. So the market is big enough to support both businesses. So I'm not worried. It's not to say that they wouldn't want our users and vice versa. I just don't think we need to go after each other's business at the moment.
I mean this respectfully, but in comparison to the three companies I'm going to talk about now, Zwift and Peloton and minnows, but digital fitness is clearly a huge growth area with enormous potential. Do you see the possibility of Apple, Google, Amazon striding into this area and bulldozing their way through it like they've done in lots of other businesses where they see potential?
I don't think so. They've got bigger things that they're chasing. But what I will say is that none of them, I think, has a fitness strategy. We'll see. We're not focused on that. If we focus on the mission, I think we're going to grow. We're going to have a big community. We're going to have a great business. And what happens after that is something we can worry about later.
In the next part of the interview, I talked to Eric about courses. I'd give this section a really careful listen to.
Right, let's get on to the stuff that Zwifters really, really want to hear about. And I don't know how much of this you can tell me, but I've got to ask. So what's the long-term strategy on courses or maps, whatever we want to call them? Is Zwiftopia always going to be the jewel in the crown?
I can't say that that'll be the case forever, but right now it's what a great place. We've already experimented with real courses, sort of a hybrid, and then completely fictitious. Watopia is certainly my favorite. That there are people who like different courses. There are plenty of people who still like Richmond, and maybe that's partly because we've made it scarce. It's a great racing course.
Yeah, it is.
It is. And London is fun, and I think you'll see London expanding. You'll see Watopia continue to expand. I think Richmond is what it is, and we'll continue to, scarcely put that out there. And then you'll start seeing new maps.
Completely new maps, completely separate from all of these three worlds.
Absolutely. The Watopia map is pretty big. There's a lot of tarmac there, a lot of roads there, and you're going to see more of that. Watopia will have more expansions over this winter.
Okay, I'm sorry to get so picky at this stage of the interview, but this is so important to so many people. So important to so many people. And if you can't say, you can't say. But you did just say Watopia is going to have more expansions, plural, this winter. Is that right?
I would imagine you'll see more. I don't know exactly how many more, but
more than one more.
You've had one already. We can let the creative juices flow on Watopia. I think the team just, they love playing in that space.
But at least one more expansion this winter by the sound.
I hope so. I hope so. And then a brand new map is on the horizon. I can say that both are under development.
Okay. And do you think we might see the brand new map this winter?
I hope so.
Okay.
I hope so. Yeah. Zwift will be taking people to places where they've never been to, where they may never go to in the real world.
So does that mean the new map might be real world based then, Eric?
It needs to have geo coordinates.
Yeah.
So it needs to live somewhere. So by definitions, yes.
Okay, I'm taking that as a yes.
Yeah. Yeah. We certainly get requests from not only the community, but from event organizers who would like for us to build iconic courses. I wouldn't rule it out completely. I think the way we would do it is just, we'd go about it differently.
Next up, course swapping.
I know the community has been asking for, like, when can they choose?
Yeah.
And part of that is a function of, like, how dense is the community on a given map. I think you'll start seeing some of the, you know, for events, perhaps you can go to, if you're doing a race, you know, maybe we'll take you to Richmond to do the race. So today's Watopia, you want to do a race, take you there. But the core of the community may be in one map. We've got the technology to swap between maps, so it's all there now. And John and his team is, you know, they've been testing this quite a bit over the last year.
Okay, so why have you not done it?
I think there's a little bit more work left, and you know, we're always constantly prioritizing, and that one is high, but it's not the highest priority. Let's just say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think it will happen this winter?
I think we have no choice because it will get crowded this winter.
Okay.
Yeah.
This idea of a long climb, John floated this in Facebook. It was a fairly clear hint from John, actually. He said, we're playing around with the idea of a very, very long climb. Why? Why would you do that? I mean, what percentage of Zwifters do the big climb? 2%, 3%, 5%?
It's not very, very high.
So why devote resource to a massive long climb?
I think there are so many users out there who crave for that, and I think it would be interesting to have a long climb. I just don't think people would do it regularly, right? It's like, you know, I mean, but I think just to mix it up, I think it'd be kind of interesting to experiment with that. But there's more that we could do with a long climb that we haven't done yet. And so there are things that John is thinking about in terms of, you know, all the gamification and you know, hooks to get you to the top, you know.
Give us a clue.
I don't have it. I literally don't know what that is. But you can rest assured that if we do a long climb, it will be fun.
Okay. But that's really interesting.
The next few minutes of the podcast are taken up with a series of quick-fire questions covering a wide range of topics, mainly in-game features.
Would you ever consider the facilities of Zwift to kind of generate a sort of what I might call a kind of vanilla landscape, a kind of, you know, identikit landscape, but where you could put in rides that you'd previously done, yeah. So recreating your own rides, but not in obviously such a rich landscape. Is that something that could be part of the Zwift experience? People ask for it a lot.
You know, we thought about that as well. I mean, we've seen other companies do that, and you will never get a beautiful map that way. Unfortunately, it requires a lot of hard work to create a beautiful map. So nothing could be auto-generated and have a polish, you know, finish that you'll see in Zwift. So I'd say the answer is probably no.
I thought this was a really interesting idea. So somebody said, why doesn't Zwift make it really easy for me to find a ride at any time with people of my ability? So you have a kind of perpetual, like eternal 2 watts per kilogram ride, you know, that is actually on 24/7.
It's matchmaking.
Yeah.
So here's the, 2.5 watts per kilogram group going off every 15 minutes, or the 3 or 4. I think those are all interesting ideas. It's not that we can't do it. It's just, again, it's a question of priorities. But I personally like that idea. I think matchmaking is something that will eventually come.
I mean, because you're so open on social media, We know you've been talking to ASO, the owners and promoters of the world's biggest bike races, including the Tour de France. What's going on there, Eric?
Well, you know, we have big fans at ASO. They use Zwift, they love Zwift, and they see real benefits in using Zwift to prepare for real events. You know, they have L'Étape de Tour, they have all these Étape events all over the world. Could Zwift be a tool to help prepare people for events that people will, you know, probably spend a lot of money, you know, traveling to? It starts with someone at ASO at a very, very senior level, just passionate about Zwift. Yeah, and it just goes from there.
Who is that then?
He's the CEO. You know, and he believes it. You have to buy into it, right? Yeah. And so he sees opportunities for ASO to work with us to promote more events and bring more people, you know, into his events and get them fit. I mean, we have the same goals.
Right on!
Triathlon and triathletes, is there a big push there?
Yes. I mean, we have almost 20% of our user base from the tri market, and that's without even going after the tri market. Right. So it's an audience that we have, and we just haven't served them at all. So we thought, okay, we need to start creating content for them and activating that community and supporting them. And these guys are training three different sports. They don't, and you know, we can serve them for two of the experiences. We're building a team of people who really understand this market, who understand the consumers, and understand the kind of experience that they want. And so you'll see more and more of that.
How far off is rowing, do you think?
Boy, I mean, we tinkered with that, you know, last year. You know, the community tinkered with that, you know, maybe 2 years ago. I think, you know, we'd like to see that come out sooner rather than later. But, you know, we have so much work to do with running first. I'd say within a year, you'll see something.
Right on!
This was a great question. I'd never thought to ask this. Who does the ride-on voices?
It's no one at the company. You know, there are professionals who voiceover. Yes. And you know, we had to go through a number of different ones to get it right. Yeah, maybe sometime in the future you can choose different voices, right?
Right on! Will we ever get beyond level 25?
There's a huge backlog of equipment that we want to release into the game. But what we're trying to do is make sure that we've got the right economy for that. We want people to have choices and not just you know, release products that they may or may not want. So I think what you'll see this year is, this winter, is the ability to perhaps choose. And so we'll start unlocking more. This is bikes, this is jerseys, and there's a whole host of products that we can release. So John and his team are working to make that available this winter. I think we're changing some of the economies. It's what gets unlocked with every level, what's available in a virtual store, and how do you earn that? So there's some changes that are coming in that front.
And for the third time, velodrome or not?
I don't find it particularly exciting to do a velodrome.
Next, I tackled the draft. Does it really change as often as people think it does?
We know the racing community is very vocal, and one of the things they complain about a lot is what they call the blob draft. Okay, and this is the idea that when groups swell to very large sizes, the size of the group seems to have this kind of weird effect in Zwift where it just gets faster and faster and faster and faster. And certainly in a racing situation, that makes it actually impossible for anyone to break away from what's called what the racers now call the blob. That's just one example of how the draft is critical to absolutely critical to the Zwift experience. And there's kind of all sorts of rumours circulated about how often you tweak the draft. So let's try and nail some kind of definites here now. How often do you tweak the draft?
We don't change it very much at all. I don't think it's changed in I don't know, maybe a year. Yeah. Really, it's interesting when we have made no changes, people are saying something changed. Yeah. But it's something that the team is aware of. I mean, look, what we have is a system that doesn't, an experience that where there's no braking. So, right? There's no collision. So we have to manage large groups. And so the drafting is somewhat artificial. I think the sooner the community accepts that it is different on Zwift, it is not real world drafting, the better it is.
But you strive for realism.
I think we can do more, but it will never be the same. And so I think the sooner people just accept and understand how the game works, and then work within those parameters, you just get on with it, right? Yeah, yeah. But it's a challenging one technically. Yeah. For John and the game team.
I mean, to some extent you've made a rod for your own back, because it's so nearly realistic that people want it to be completely realistic, and I think you're saying it will never be completely realistic, but is there an argument for a fresh look at the draft, or are you saying this is probably about as good as it's ever going to get?
Well, I think that's probably better for John to say, and the question is, well, even if it could, is it worth it? You know, the effort that might have to go into that versus other things that we can do. It is a complicated bit of work to get that right. It's not just the drafting, but it's all the way the different players interact and flow, and it's not a trivial piece of technology.
How do you see group workouts developing, Eric? I mean, to me, that looks to be a hugely significant development for the platform. Do you share that view? And group workouts looks like super early days. It looks like one of those products that we'll look back on in a year or 18 months and say, goodness me, that was basic, look how far it's come. Is that the kind of right way of thinking about it?
I think it's a game changer, complete game changer. I mean, it's brilliant for coaches, right? If finally they can actually do something with their athletes. We have to give them more tools, but the idea that I can do a training ride with Andre Greipel, right, or a professional rider or a coach or a ride leader, and do it in a way that makes it social, and I'm remain in this group. So I think it's a very inclusive experience. I think we can experiment not only with text that can be built into the workouts, but we can, there's nothing stopping us from putting recorded voice in there.
What about live?
It could be live as well. Live is interesting, but it's not particularly scalable. All right? Unlike a spinning class where you have live instructors, you're just limited by the number of instructors. We could literally have a workout every 15 seconds if we wanted to. It's incredibly scalable. We can do it in different language if it's text versus voice. I mean, we're just scratching the surface of what we could do with group workouts, and I think it's going to be the most popular experience. So if you have, you've got the free ride, you've got, individual workouts, you've got, races of some sort, or group rides. And then you've got these group events, and I believe that will be the most popular mode.
Do you?
I really do. It's not today, but I see all the signs indicate to that being potentially the most popular. Yes, because it's it's structured training, it's social, right? You do it with others. I think that's the perfect combination.
Racing next. This gets really interesting.
eCrit Live Final in Melbourne looked to be a very, very successful experiment. And I mean, it clearly was, because you've rolled out this format now of of a race series, culminating in a live final, for real. Is this, and I kind of asked this question on the last episode of the podcast really, is this Zwift saying we love racing official? I mean, is this Zwift really getting behind racing now?
I think we are getting more comfortable with it. I mean, it's not perfect. I think for Zwift to become truly esports, and other people might disagree, I think what's lacking is skills, right? At the moment, it's predominantly, go as hard as you can. It's time trial, right? It's about pure effort. That's not the case in the real world, right? The strongest rider in the real world does not necessarily win. Or more often than not, they don't. And so what is that in Zwift? And we haven't figured that out yet. So I don't think we can say that we are, in esports yet. I think we'll eventually figure it out. But the element of having skills in Zwift is still not, defined.
The more well-informed people around this area would, I'm certain, agree with that. But in the meantime, you're clearly going to continue with racing because it's great content, apart from anything else. And we are seeing racing now featuring in your advertising. And the cynical might say, well, if you're going to benefit from the success of racing, which really has stemmed from the community, I mean, it's been completely community organised and community generated. Zwift is now helping, and has been helping for some time, but really it's come from the community. And Zwift is now using it in its advertising and marketing. Is it not then incumbent on Zwift to try to do more to root out cheating? And there are things Zwift could do. I mean, if somebody enters their weight at 80 kilograms and 2 days later enters it at 42, Zwift could do something about that.
Yeah. What we'd like to do, it's a difficult place to be, right? I'd say I probably would rather give those tools to event promoters and let them do the policing.
But that would mean them having a direct relationship with your customer.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's not all races are Zwift Power races, for example. So perhaps there are races which are just open, and it's harder to catch people who might be sort of, let's say, cheating. I mean, I think there are plenty of people who are just using equipment that's just poorly calibrated, and and there are clearly people who are probably cheating, and I think the community has flagged those. Could we potentially give tools to event promoters so that they are blacklisted from events? Possibly. I mean, these are all things that I think we need to discuss internally. It's not a nice thing to prevent a paying customer from. So this is the tricky part.
People are mature enough to get that, Eric. But I think when they see racing being used in Zwift marketing,
that's a fair point.
And racing to an extent being used to sell the platform, there are people who might say, and I think I have some sympathy with them, that Zwift just needs to be a tiny bit more active. Yeah. But it's the one thing in the community that really raises hackles. I mean, are you?
Yeah, I do follow some of the discussions. At the moment, this is something that we do need to sort out internally. There may be a couple of things that we could do to help support that. So we'll have to see.
Were you pleased or disappointed with the level of graduation from the men's academy?
I think we need to tweak the program for next year, because the professional contract was really for the under 23, and they should have had a slightly different program than the broader community that just wanted to participate in training. I looked at the program. I looked at the workouts, and they're pretty hard. 90 minutes commitment for some of the workouts. I mean, that's a lot to ask for. So I think one of the things that we learned this year is for those who are clearly not gunning for a pro contract, well, they should have more flexibility. It should be easier to achieve. By doing that, we probably could have double, triple the number of people who completed it, including just starting. I think people are just intimidated by the program.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a learning exercise for us.
The women, did the men put the men to shame? I mean, there was twice the rate of graduation from that. Do you think that was because they knew what they were getting after last year?
I think so, because we had so many returning for the program. I think that really helped. And if that's any sign of what might happen with the men's field, I think we should see, on a similar level of growth in terms of how many people will complete the program.
Eagerly awaited by some, apparently almost ready to launch, Voice then seemed to disappear. What's happened?
I think we put it to the side last winter. We had more important things to worry about. I think it's something that will resurrect again this winter. And sometimes we question, is it that important? Does the community really want voice? Do you really want to talk to other people?
I sense there's been a little bit of a pivot, a little bit of a rethink on this. Would that be accurate?
Well, it's work, right? It's just work, and there are other things that we could potentially be doing than voice, but it's back on the table, and I hope we can at least do some sort of testing and find out if this is really what the community wants. There is a very small community that actually uses like the Discord and the TeamSpeak to talk to one another. But if we do implement voice, it's got to be super, super easy, and we have to respect privacy.
So it's a more complicated issue than possibly at first sight you thought it was.
Yeah, it's a little bit involved, but I think I'd like for us to experiment with that this winter. Right. I think there's something to be said about meeting a random person and then sharing, a moment together. Yeah. And if you could do that with voice.
There's also something that
tricky about right. That. And then so we have to give, we need to think through what are the privacy settings that we need to offer to consumers. And some people might say, I don't want anyone to talk to me. Yeah. And so that could be a turn off in itself, right?
Your FTP, when we first did this in 2015, it was 287 watts. Now, last year you weren't specific, but you did fear it had gone down. So where is it now, Eric?
I think I'm right back there. I did lose some weight this year, which helps to. I did get fit, so I did get some coaching, and I was on a program. I'm no longer on that, but I'm sort of in maintenance mode. I'm reasonably fit. So with 5 hours of riding a week, I can pretty much go out and ride with my mates and do a 100-mile ride. I can't do it back to back, but it's certainly enough to still have perform respectively in the real world.
Quite a lot of Silicon Valley companies, and I'm not sure that we can call Zwift a Silicon Valley company, but it kind of is in some ways. They have a kind of worldview that is kind of utopian, or they have these big aspirations to kind of change the world. Yeah. Is that something you subscribe to as a business?
Well, if you're asking if Zwift has big aspirations, could we influence how people consume fitness? Could we touch millions of consumers? Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely one of those, I think. And we don't, I don't think anyone else has a similar kind of aspirations. We're a mission-driven company. It's not we're led by the mission, and we believe that if we follow that mission, it will then lead to a very successful business.
And that's it, Zwifters. The 2017 Eric Min Zwiftcast interview. Lots and lots of interesting stuff in there, some of which I think will bear closer scrutiny and deeper analysis to get to the certainties that we all crave, particularly about courses, maps and new game features. It's certainly a very busy time for Zwift, and that was reflected in the content of that interview, I think. Lots and lots to look forward to this winter. Thanks very much indeed to Eric for giving me so much time. And thanks, as ever, to Zwift for supporting this podcast. And just the usual reminder, even though they do support the podcast generously, Zwift never interfere with the content of our podcast. Hope you enjoyed it, Zwifters. See you next time.